Bring that up. 3, 2, 1. Joshua, let's do this! And here we go. We're live. It's Let's Solve the Universe. I'm here with Joshua Lisec. This is incredible. It's amazing where one tweet can lead you. Joshua, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty stoked to be here. Thanks, Alliance, for having me on.
It is my pleasure. It was awesome. I just love the fact that, 2 or 3 tweets in, you're like, hey, yeah, I'll come on your podcast. You and I both have a mutual... we mutually follow the one and only Scott Adams, who is the persuasion genius. And considering what we've been going through the last few weeks, it's been real fun to watch his Periscope feeds. He's doing 2 of them now a day.
That's right. Doing two a day, the simultaneous sip in the morning with your coffee or tea or other beverage, and the simultaneous swaddle at night with your blanket.
And you were on his show at one point, weren't you?
I was, yes. It was last summer. We spoke for about 15 minutes on an interview. That one appearance and his subsequent recommendation, he said, "Hey, if you want to write a book, talk to Joshua Lisec. He's got all this experience. He's written all these books. You can trust that he knows what he's talking about." And so that one moment of praise was worth quite a bit of business. Quite a bit of business for me.
That is amazing. How did you even get that going? How did you establish that relationship? Was it the same sort of thing that I did where, hey, you want to come on the show?
Almost. But it wasn't quite as fast as a couple of tweets. It was several months of, I would post things and I would tag him. I would respond to things I knew that were of interest to him, or he'd talk about something or asked a question. I would say, "Oh, hey, Scott, I found the answer to that question you had today." And he would retweet me. After several retweets, he eventually followed me. And then I don't know exactly what happened, but he was saying, "Hey, I'm looking to talk to people on my my morning podcast on this topic." And it was the case of people who had changed their political persuasion. And I reached out to him and said, "Hey, that's me." And he responded back, and we set up a time, and away we went.
People that had changed their political persuasion. Interesting. I think that ties into, because I know on your Twitter profile that you were the executive producer on Better Left Unsaid film, which...
That's right.
I guess leads into, one of the reasons why you maybe got on that podcast. Interesting. Now...
Yes.
Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was going to say that Better Left Unsaid is an independent documentary. It's in the process of acquiring what's called errors and omissions insurance. The legal team of the distributor looks it over, and soon it will be available on Netflix, Amazon, iTunes, etc., etc. Just like most independent release documentaries and other films are. The inception of the movie started back when I met a Toronto-based filmmaker named Kurt Jaimongal. Kurt and we were sitting in the basement of an Irish pub in the Battery Park of New York City, 3 a.m. And we were unweaving the secrets of the universe after 3 or 4, shall we say, adult beverages. And we were talking everything from quantum mechanics to politics to persuasion. And he was sharing that he was very much disillusioned with kind of the progressive movement. I believe he's a second generation immigrant. I believe his parents are from India, that Indian subcontinent, that part of the world. And usually that, the progressives, the left, the Democrats, whatever group you want to talk about, the Liberal Party, for example, that's kind of who they seem to appeal to. And that's the environment that he grew up in. But then he noticed that there was the embrace of a lot of extreme elements that weren't being divided apart from them. For example, you have on the political right, I know we're kind of weaving into politics now, but all politics is simply persuasion applied. So it's a lot of great lessons that politics offers us for persuading people in day-to-day life. Back to Kurt and politics and the right. Whatever the right is, whether you're in Australia or Canada or US or even India. For the mainstream right, there's been that split between kind of the fringe, the crazies, we don't want to be associated at all with you people. Like you're a little little actually racist, a little actually offensive. So we're just going to not have a lot to do with you. So there was a clear institutional split. However, on the left, when you look at the types of people that Democratic politicians, liberal politicians retweet or share their posts, or are happy to be seen on stage with, or are giving an interview with, and you go and look at that person's content they've been putting out there, they're quite horrified. They're like, do you not see a problem with anything that this person has posted? And one of the most popular examples is a lot of the controversy surrounding pretty much any main, you could call them social justice warrior types, who are known for a lot of bombastic things. Like, for example, Sarah Rayau, I believe her name is. She's posted quite a bit of, a lot of people would consider inappropriate, even downright racist stuff on Twitter, and yet she's constantly being praised and retweeted by the mainstream left. So the point of this film is to set off the sirens to say, guys, you who are on the left side of the political spectrum are allowing your fringe to call the shots in a way that the right does not do. It does not allow, it does not tolerate. So Better Left Unsaid is a film that the purpose of which is to identify where is that line where we go from being an ethical movement who believe in liberal values and progress, true progress, not regressing. Well, where's that line? And then when that line has gotten crossed by different cultures, different societies, different governments, what have been the consequences? So it's not trying to predict, oh, it's going to be terrible, trying to use the past to predict the future. Rather, we look at human nature. On the political left, the shadows of human nature that are allowed to run free, such as social justice, often being a vehicle for collective revenge, because some people feel like because they're not privileged, they need to fight back. And if words are violence, you can fight words with actual violence. So that's my pitch for the movie. If you hear the phrase "words are violence," you think that's a crock, you'll probably like this movie.
It's fascinating after watching the trailer and hearing your description of it. I found myself interestingly on both sides of the political spectrum and on both sides of, say, the social justice warrior spectrum as well, because being somebody that grew up with a disability, it was real easy to kind of play the victim card and say, oh, well, I have this disability and I can't do stuff. So, if you're not recognizing this, then you're whatever. Growing up in the 90s, it was kind of like, well, whatever, you have a disability, so that sucks to be you. There wasn't really a lot of recourse. Certainly not the online recourse that we have today. But just, I'm astounded by how quickly this whole movement has come in and swept any sort of sane discussion happening at universities across Canada, across the United States. The one university I lecture at, University of Waterloo, they seem to have less of it. Like I definitely, it's been interesting to lecture some of those students because they seem to have less of, they're much more willing to explore those conversations and go, okay, we don't want to be associated with this, this extreme left that just, shouts and screams and doesn't allow any speech that they deem unworthy to be aired. But it's definitely freaky. It's a tough time. I feel like it's a really tough time to be on the left or the right. It
is. That's why we like to straddle both.
Yeah, it's like, well, part of me goes like, why can't we just do both? There's certain ideas on the left that I like. There's certain ideas on the right that I like. Why can't we pick and choose which ones work? I thought that's what we were supposed to do with having multiple parties, right?
Yes, to everyone who feels like there's not really a home for them on the very vocal side of their aisle. It's like, I mean, yeah, I agree with what she's saying, but they're not saying it how I like. That's kind of cringy. I always recommend the TED Talk by Jonathan Haidt, who wrote The Happiness Hypothesis. He teaches at the Stern School of Business at New York University. His work is on human ethics and what are the moral foundations of conservative values and the moral foundations of liberal values, and seeing how those form, see how those play out. And just kind of talk about borrowing the best of both worlds. Conservatives value, okay, like the foundation is the value of order, right? You have an organization, you have a system. Scott Adams talks about this a lot, how the Republicans, how the conservatives are usually the parties of systems. Even if they don't always work all the time, it's better than guesswork or kind of throwing a bunch of money at a problem to try to solve a goal. So order and tradition and honor and loyalty and like that kind of word cloud, that's the word cloud of values for the conservatives, for the right, for the Republicans, for whatever your nations or backgrounds, your geographies, political parties. And on the left, the two primary values seem to be the protection of the vulnerable and the prevention of harm. Those two right there. And if we look at all of our own lives, we realize that we embody all of those values in different parts of our lives. For example, I own a ghostwriting business. I really, 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 really believe in the power of systems. I have an entire project management setup for taking on multiple clients at a time. Most ghostwriters can barely do one book a year, and I do 10 times that or more. It's because of my systems. At the same time, I am vegan because I am very deeply concerned about the factory farming and factory farm fishing situation and the mass suffering that happens to other sentient beings on this planet who were unfortunate enough to not be born human in this case. So I'm like, well, I care about this conservative value and I really care about this liberal value. Unfortunately, that doesn't generate headlines. That doesn't get clicks. Normal people being reasonable doesn't get headlines. So it's the fringes who get the clicks, who get the money, who get the attention. And as Mike Cernovich says, where there is attention, there is influence.
Where there is attention, there is influence. Reminds me of a quote from Command and Conquer Tiberian Sun: "Control the media, control the mind." And there is a certain amount of logic to that. That's fascinating. You're a vegan too. And as you mentioned systems, I went down just before our podcast interview. For those of you who are listening, I'm holding up a book. Joshua, you know what book this is. How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big, the systems book.
Absolutely. Systems over goals.
Systems over goals, 100%. It's... When I read that, I recommend that book to everybody. It literally changed my life. Like it was, and I mean, I still struggle with trying to maintain those systems and not get too fixated on goals, but it's still, finding out that system and working that system has worked so much better than just saying, I'm going to just set a target and try and hit it. And if you don't hit it, you feel like crap. And if you do hit it, you're like, okay, well, what's next?
That was me in my health for many, many years. And then after kind of ballooning up, frankly, to an uncomfortable body mass index, BMI, I decided, I got to do something. I had it my goal for like 6-7 years to get back down to what I weighed while I was in high school. Nothing worked. I tried pretty much everything. And then I did two things simultaneously. I switched to a vegan diet, which as a system automatically meant that I now had a rainbow for every meal, right? Different colors of fruits and vegetables and grains and lots of proteins. And you have to be intentional about getting all of the 8 essential amino acids from different sources. It's like you can't just, plop down, you have a pizza, okay, I got my protein on the pepperoni, and your cheese, okay, that's the protein, and then okay, I got grain, the white flour, like that was the way before. So then I have the system that ensures I'm getting all the nutrients that I need. And then I add into that intermittent fasting, where you're eating in like a 6-hour, 8-hour window. And that collectively resulted in losing 55 pounds and dropping 2 shirt sizes from extra large down to medium, which is what I was when I was in high school.
Nicely done. My
Thank you.
I followed a similar system. I ended up dropping 95 pounds about 10 years ago through just not drinking soda and not eating pizza and playing Dance Dance Revolution.
It's a system. It's a system. Like look at this right here. I got my sparkling water, right? My
Nice.
sparkling water, no sugar instead of soda. It's sparkling waters all the way.
Nice. That's the way to do it. Lest we get too far in the weeds with politics and talking about Scott Adams and his awesome content, I wanted to ask you a little bit about ghostwriting. Because something that struck me about your profile was that you're not. I know a lot of writers, and I've talked to a lot of different writers. And I've talked to some good writers, and I've talked to some not some good writers. But a ghostwriter. So talk to me about ghostwriting. How is that different from your traditional, I sit down and write a book?
Ghostwriting is acting in print. I have professional theater background doing dinner theater, improv, stage productions, and that as part of my talent stack, to borrow Scott Adams's world, has taught me how to look at words on a page and make them come alive. Even make suggestions like, the character I'm portraying right now on stage, I feel like if we added this line or that line and spun this one instead, added the word here, it would make a one-dimensional character 3 dimensions. And so, having written 2 novels myself, I know how to go about writing a book. So you add that kind of that talent into the stack, and then how to portray someone else authentically, add that in there. And then the collective experience of ghostwriting over 45 books and hundreds of thousands, actually probably millions of words at this point, and marketing copy and product descriptions and all that for my freelance writing clients over the years, you learn how to write a message in someone else's voice, but also make it clear. So what separates ghostwriting from good, I guess, regular writing, good writing, is it's not just that my objective is to write with brevity and clarity. Get the point across as fast as possible using the author's style. So some authors love to use metaphors and analogy, and there's different types. Some people like to use bombastic visual metaphors that stick in your head. Some are a little cringy, maybe even a little gross, but they stick in there. Other people are very much tacticians. They have to describe the features from every single possible angle. So it's going from abstract to concrete. But the other person is like, hey, this new thing I'm telling you about, it's like this. And then they give you this wild visual metaphor. So it's my job to pick up the idiosyncrasies, the style, even like the ratio of passive to active voice, how often they use adverbs, where do they put prepositions in the sentence? Do they say such as, or, including, subtle word choices that distinguish them from other people? I'm the only ghostwriter in the world who uses writing analytics software to tell me that. It's not just gut or guesswork I use to write in the voice of my clients. It's the data science of stylometry.
I was just about to ask you about whether you're using some sort of software to process this, and actually, because that strikes me as a very analytical way to look at writing. I've never heard anyone talk about writing that way, of just breaking it down to analyze it and see even that subtle word choice and that idea of acting in the style of that writer. That's a fascinating way to look at it. When you talk about these writing analytics and these skills that you've developed, was this something that you took a course in it and you've suddenly figured it out, or has this been like refining your style over the years and finding out what works and what doesn't? Like, what got you to this point?
It was a little bit of both. Real world experience, having gone through the process of writing my own books, and they actually got published by like a real publisher, real publishing house. You learn a lot about what works and what doesn't for a book. And I was 20 years old and I had myself a 2-book deal. It was when I was going to book fairs and doing book signings, taking selfies with fans back when we had the flip phones, right? Just a few short years ago, that a couple of my freelance writing clients who I was writing marketing copy for and sales letters, they independently of one another approached me and asked if I could help them write their books. They said, "Hey, we found out about your novels. We want to write stories for not fiction, but our memoirs of our lives. And we want them to read like their novels, not like it's a boring textbook or personal autobiography." I was born in 1934 in this little town outside of. No one cares. No one cares. And after these clients approached me, I guess I said, "Well, okay, fine, sure, I'll help you with your book." No idea what ghostwriting was at that time. I just walked them through the process that had worked for me to get myself a two-book deal, and it worked. And then over time, I've written in all sorts of different categories: religion, politics, history, theology, all sorts of business topics, from management to sales to leadership, history of leadership, mash them together, the history of theological leadership. I've pretty much seen and done everything in the industry at this point. When you can't do that, you can't write 45 books and not do that, essentially. In terms of practical education, I do have 2 college degrees, which are in business communications. And then I graduated from California State University, Long Beach, their ghostwriting program. It's a master's degree level program, the only academic ghostwriting program in the world. You have to demonstrate proficiency. It's not like you show up, take ghostwriting tests. Okay, which author wrote this book? Okay, draw a line across it. Okay, you get A plus, 5 gold stars. It's, hey, here are real actual authors and their notes. Write a book. If we like what you write is for their chapters, you get to pass. And so it was, you show up and there's very little actual practical step-by-step instruction. It's, okay, write a book. Let's see how you can do. And if you pass, then you get to be a certified professional ghostwriter. From what I heard the last time I checked in, there are fewer than 100 writers in the entire galaxy who have completed this program. So for the top of the industry, what do they say? It's lonely at the top. It definitely is. There's only about 100 of us.
Wow. Yeah. That's you could book most of a restaurant and still have a few seats left over. That's crazy. So you do have those professional sort of the certifications, that foundation. You've gone through and created these writing analytics. Is this for the writing analytics? Like, is that software that you developed, or are you using stuff that's already out there? Like, what do you use?
Yes, it's actually a patchwork of programs that I sketched out how the system would function. I put together kind of the framework, or the wireframe you would call it. And then I worked with a developer that I've worked with on some other web projects and other applications for clients when I was doing a lot of freelance writing sort of stuff. I said, "Hey, come here, help me out with this. I got this stuff. Here's what I want it to do." And together we figured it out. We worked it, and now it's a proprietary, one-of-a-kind tool. So I can say I'm the only one in the world who uses writing analytics to capture and recreate an author's authentic voice. The reason why I did this and built this solution is not just, "Oh, hey, look at me." Like, okay, that's cool. It was a solution to a problem that I identified earlier on in my career. 3, 4, 5 years ago, even before that. I've been doing this for 9 years, so I guess not too early in my career. I noticed that a lot of people who knew they needed help with a book, like they don't have the time, they don't know how to write a book, they don't have the time to learn how to write a book and make sure it's good and edit and do 3 drafts and spend 3 years on their first one like I did. But they hesitated to hire a ghostwriter, much less an editor, because they would say, "Joshua, I hired this copywriter for this one project to test them out. What they wrote was great. Doesn't sound like me at all. I can't publish this under my name. This is awful." I have the #1 search result on Google for the keyword ghostwriter scam, as well as ghostwriting scam, and also ghost space writer scam. And I talk about some of the common pitfalls that aspiring authors stumble into when they think about hiring a ghostwriter. And that is usually top of the list. You find somebody who has all these great credentials. Oh, they are New York Times bestselling ghostwriter, whatever. You bring them in, they write a chapter, and it sounds like they wrote it because they have a New York Times bestseller. Doesn't sound like you. So I'm uniquely the data science-based solution for making sure the book that someone else writes for you sounds like you, so you can't even tell you work with a ghostwriter.
Right. So when that book hits the shelf, it sounds like you, the person who wanted to write the book, actually wrote it. That is an absolutely clever solution to that.
Yes, yes. I've been able to get my clients to pass the work that I've produced to their literary agent, to their publishing house, to the big five publishing house editor, to even, get this, their spouse.
Hmm.
And none of them can tell they worked with a ghostwriter. They're like, wow, this is really good. You're good at this.
You must
That's
be
what I
really
get paid for.
you must be really handy for writing those anniversary letters. You should start a side service doing that.
Yeah, I know that ghostwriting dating profiles is a thing, I hear.
Yeah, you never know. I know in the in some sales training literature that I've got, in other words, a book, one of my favorite books, Selling for Dummies, apparently written by Tom Hopkins, although I have the funny feeling he used a ghostwriter for it. He talks about the idea of sending those thank you cards and sending, letters to your clients, get to know when their anniversaries and when their birthdays are, and send them,
Yeah.
a card a week before, because sometimes people forget.
Yes, yes. Unfortunately, unfortunately, it happens.
Yeah, unfortunately. So let's back up a second and talk about influential content, because obviously we follow Scott Adams a lot. We're both students. I'd like to say we're students of persuasion. I certainly have a long ways to go. I'll fully admit that. For somebody who is creating content, whether it's video, audio, written content, you had mentioned to me before we started that there's something that you like to call the pillars of influential content. What are these pillars? How many of them are there? And do I just go to Home Depot to pick them up, or where do I go and get them?
You have to go to Lowe's.
Ah,
Yes, the 6 pillars of influential content is a system, there's that word again, for creating a persuasive message, whether it's a 300-page book or a 300-word article, to get people to feel pulled into your message, persuaded to adopt your ideas, and then propelled to take action. Speaking of action, there is quite a cool little story that I recently became aware of, demonstrating the proof that the 6 pillars bears itself out. I recently found that there's a website called Book Authority, bookauthority.org. It's a list of like the top 100 books of all time in the top most common categories, like the top 100 best leadership books of all time, top 100 best persuasion books of all time. And these lists are rated by the likes of Tim Ferriss, Warren Buffett, Elon Musk, and it's right there on the website. Like, wow, that's pretty cool. And I just came across it the other day, and I'm scrolling along there. Okay, Robert Cialdini's at the top. Oh, okay, of course he is. The influence, psychology, persuasion. Scrolling on down, and number 3 is a book that I wrote of the 100 best persuasion books of all time. Number 3. I was like, wow. Fortunately, it is an author I do not have a non-disclosure agreement with. In fact, she, after the book was out, and she made roughly $300,000 from the launch of the book, she reached out to me and said, Joshua, let's do a testimonial video. I want to share in about 20 minutes everything you did with me to bring my book idea from a bunch of notes in Google Drive to this thing that's exploded my business and has rocketed me to, frankly, celebrity status in the industry. So that is the outcome of following the 6 pillars of influential content. Now, if you're writing, let's say, an email to the boss or to a direct report, I'm not saying you'll make $300,000 from that. But what I will say is that you'll be following a system that is tested and proven to convert skeptics into evangelists for you. So let's talk about the 6 pillars, shall we?
Go for it.
The first pillar of influential content is credibility. Now, that's a word everyone is familiar with. Oh, is this person credible? Oh, I want to be credible. Oh, I need credibility. But what does it actually mean? Nowadays, in the world of social media and short attention spans, the resume or CV is no longer the frame we want to put on credibility because it's boring. It's not going to get clicks, views, engagement. It's not even going to build trust. What people find credible nowadays across industries, the data bears this out, is lived experience. Now, this is something that you'll find the political left talks about a lot, and they're 100% right. Having lived experience, let's say living with a disability, living as a first-generation immigrant, those are incredible experiences that lend you to be a credible voice to talk about what it is that you've been through, what you've overcome on the way. And this is true in how-to worlds as well. Like, for example, if it's a weight loss journey, talk about how you went about losing 90 pounds or 55. Like, that's a credibility story. It's sharing your lived experience. So what is your lived experience that demonstrates you know what you're talking about, and you're not some fly-by-night yahoo who Googled a Wikipedia page on your topic, rearranged the notes, and then turned it into a book or an article or a video. But you have a story that bears this out. That's a credibility pillar.
So that's pillar number 1. And you had mentioned that there were 6. So we've got 1 out of 6, the live experience. I gotta say, from personal experience, when I read those stories, even if there's a story with hard data versus a story that just, feels and sounds credible, I'm more likely to go with the one that sounds credible. So I would agree with that one. What's the second one?
The second pillar is connection. And this one is so obvious, yet so missed. It's basically hidden in plain sight. Think about one of the last emails that you just sent to someone. This could be a colleague, this could be a friend, this could be your food delivery driver. Did what you say connect to the outcome that you wanted, to the outcome that the recipient of the message wanted, or was it just relaying information? When you are sharing, when you're communicating, connect what you're going to be talking about to what people want, the outcome that they want, what they find valuable. A great simple frame to put on the connection pillar is, what does everyone want in this? So imagine if you're thinking about writing a fitness book. Rather than say, okay, here's all the information I have. I can write about food, and I can write about calories, and I can write about fasting, and I can write about lifting, and I can write about sun and steel. Do you even lift, bro? All the things that you can write about. But is there a clear path through your ideas from point A, fat, to point B, fit? Is there, or is it just a bunch of ideas that are out on the page? Are you connecting your base of knowledge to the destination that you're taking readers? This is kind of obvious in the book publishing world, because all it takes to know your connection pillar, and whether or not you have one, is to look at your table of contents. If I'm scanning through, do I see that you're connecting your knowledge to what it is that I want, so that if I spend 300 pages with you, you'll get me a result that I want? If that's obvious to me, congratulations, you've set up the connection pillar of influential content.
This sounds like a principle that can be used very well in the teaching world as well. This idea of we need to be able to connect, because when you're in teaching and lecturing, like I do sometimes, we're constantly having to connect the topic back to the learner's objectives. What do we want them to get out of this? So it sounds like one of the main pillars is that if you want somebody to get something out of the content that you've written, you really do need to connect it to what they find valuable. What are they going to get out of it? And and make it obvious to them, it sounds like. Is that reasonable to say?
Yes. And the shorthand for answering the question, well, how do I connect it? Find the keywords people are searching a lot for on Google related to your subject matter expertise. And what are the words that they're using? That is your shortcut or your shorthand to go from your knowledge base to what the result people want. For example, I was talking to someone the other day who is an expert on machine learning, artificial intelligence software. She does a lot of work in Silicon Valley. And she said that her expertise is trusted data management. And I want to write a book on trusted data management. Okay, let's see about that connection pillar. I put it into a tool called Keywords Everywhere, a free Google Chrome extension. How many searches a month does trusted data management get? 0 searches per month. That's how many it gets. So if we write a book that is about trusted data management and it's kind of subsidiary ideas and it's related ideas, that has a precise audience of 0 people. Now, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but the point is it's not a commercially viable book. So what we had to do is say, okay, why are people looking for a data management solution? Are there security breaches? In your case, it'd be beyond the passwords or beyond passwords, Elias, as you talk about with your book. Like, what are the keywords that people are searching that might lead them to your solution? So then that tells you what the keywords need to be in that table of contents. So people are scrolling through it or flipping through it and they see, oh, I want to know about that. I want to know about that. I need to know how to do that. And the book sells itself. You don't have to guess or be clever. You just have to have the data.
Right. So it's a very analytical approach to figuring out how do we connect with these people. I like that. So that tool that you mentioned was the Keywords Everywhere plugin for Chrome. Yes.
It's basically $10 for 100,000 searches, something like that. So a couple years, it's $10 every couple of years. I use it quite a bit, and it tells you not only if you type in a keyword like how to become a ghostwriter, for example, maybe it gets 2,900 searches a month. But in the on the right-hand side of my screen of the Google search results, Keywords Everywhere says, here are alternative keywords that people are also searching and how many searches they get per month. So it opens up this whole world of people who are looking for your expertise, what they're actually typing. Mike Cernovich, author of Guerrilla Mindset, he said it like, I think this is almost a year and a half ago. He said he had sold 100,000 copies of Guerrilla Mindset. And he said the way he was able to do that was in part through organic sales by using the keywords people were searching for on the topic of mindset and confidence and self-talk, looking up those keywords on Google, picking the versions of those keywords that had the highest searches and making that the title of the chapter.
Ah, that's a clever way to do it. I like it. So again, it's a very data-driven approach too.
Yes, guesswork or like, oh, is this any good? Is this going to work? Are people going to like this? If that's what your questions are as an author, you're playing the wrong game.
Interesting. So then to move past that, to move past this guesswork, this is where we start to get into this data-driven idea of creating our content. This is where we get into the pillars. We've covered 2 of the pillars so far. Let's go to number 3. Go for it.
Number 3 is the simplest and also the most resistible, as it's especially educated people, intellectuals, academics resist the 3rd pillar, which is compelling. 3 C's: credibility, connection, credibility, connection, and compelling. Compelling is very simple. If your content is easy to read, it is compelling. Full stop. Easy to read, speaking of the data, is the 5th grade reading level or below. Essentially, yes. Could a 10-year-old read your book, your speech, listen to your speech? Could they read your white paper, your article, and know what the heck you're talking about to the point that they could follow through, apply it, and get the results? If the answer is yes, congratulations, you have compelling content.
And as a recovering academic, I can attest to this because I've written many a paper that, putting it through Flesch Kincaid and all the different reading tests, realized, oh crap. In fact, I did an A/B test with this once. So I joined Toastmasters a number of years ago. As for my icebreaker speech, I pulled out as many multiple syllable words as I possibly could. Then, a few years later, as part of my master's project, I was working on a little bit of writing analytics. I was basically trying to figure out, can we make a program that actually shows me what emotions will somebody feel when they hear me say this passage, and how understandable am I? And so I used that. I put my original icebreaker speech through it and realized, oh crap, I'm evoking all the wrong emotions and it's way too hard to follow. So use that to get it down to that 10th grade reading, or even lower than the 10th grade. It was the 5th or 6th grade reading level, delivered it, and everybody at the club basically came up to me and said, I don't know what it was about that, but it was way better than your original speech and way more memorable. And it was just like, oh my God, if I simplify this, people will actually, they don't have to spend that time thinking about, it's kind of like when you're watching a good movie versus a bad movie, isn't it? You watch a good movie and you're like, you get drawn in into the content. When you watch a bad movie, you're like, oh, I'm watching a bad movie.
Right, you're pulled out of the message, and if at any point there's a break in the reading, and you're like, "Wait, I have to read that sentence 3 times. I have no idea what it means."
Yes,
That's a bad book. That's a bad book.
That's every book on statistics.
I get it.
That's basically every book on statistics. I remember going through that with a statistician about ordinary least squares regression, and they gave me a definition, and like you could read it down or you could read it up, read exactly the same way. And then eventually we figured out, oh, so you mean if the point is on the line, then that's the predicted point. If it's off the line, the distance between the point and the line is how much it's off by, how much its predicted error is. And she's like, yeah. Oh, okay. How come we needed like all this space to figure that out? So, okay. So compelling content is easy to read.
And I'll give another tip, an insanely useful tip that you will just want to take away and use literally in the next 5 minutes. And it is your area of expertise. Like, let's say a statistics, in your case, Elias. So how do you write compelling content that's easy to read, easy to digest? The idea goes right from the page into your consciousness for good. How do you make that happen in your industry, on your topic? Go to Google and type in Wikipedia, simple English, statistics. Maybe you're a marketing expert. Wikipedia, simple English, marketing. And what will come up is the version of Wikipedia that is for people who are learning English. It's not using abstract, conceptual language, 5-syllable words, the $5 words when a 5-cent one will do. It's information that goes straight into the brain. If you can write your book, your speech, your article like it's the simple English Wikipedia page on your subject matter expertise, you have compelling content.
Love it. The simple English. So that's compelling, credibility, and connection. Number 4.
Counter industry. This is so important because from the perspective of the publishing industry, there's a lot of competition out there. Even if you think no one has ever written about this topic before, like I have, chances are there's 5,000 books on it. Marketing alone has over 80,000 books on Amazon right now. So the question is, what do you have to say that the previous 80,000 books haven't? And often the shortcut to find out what that is, that will find a unique, unfilled, profitable gap in the marketplace. This applies to books, applies to products, applies to services, applies to anything you want to sell. The way to find out what the gap is to go against the flow. Go counter to what all the experts are saying. That is literally how Scott Adams has become one of the foremost public intellectuals in America, frankly. He literally has the ear of some of the most powerful people in the galaxy. And it is because you take what the experts' opinion are, and he goes against it 99 times out of 100, and he's often right. Now, not 99 out of 100. That's a slight exaggeration. I think he said his prediction rate has something like an 83% accuracy, but most of his predictions, the vast majority, go completely against what the experts are saying. That gets our attention pretty quick, rather than credentials, because he's going counter to to what the industry is going. So if you can highlight the ways that the powers that be, the titans at the top of your industry, the celebrities, the superstars, if you can point out not just that they're wrong, but why they're wrong and how to do it differently, and that's the way to get the result, boom, you have yourself an influential message.
So run against the flow, counter industry. Interesting. Highlight how to do it different from the titans.
And I'll give you an example of how I do that in my own business when I talk about ghostwriting services. Every publishing professional is always talking about how to sell more books, sell as many books as possible, sell. Road to 1,000 copies, sell 10,000 copies, sell 100,000 copies. Yes, I have authors who have sold that many copies consistently on autopilot. But is that what I talk about? No. My counter industry message is the following. Doesn't matter how many books you sell. What matters is your book revenue pyramid. What's the book revenue pyramid? It's very simply this shape. You have one bottom level of the pyramid, you have a mid level of the pyramid, and you have a smaller level on top of your book revenue pyramid, which is the money that's produced when you write a book. The bottom of your pyramid is actually book sales. So yes, you want as many book sales as possible. You want your book in as many hands as possible. But there's not a lot of money that's coming from 99-cent Kindle read or a $10 paperback, that sort of a thing. Because you have to. That's why everyone's thinking, I get $5 per paperback copy. Oh, gee, to make back for the money I invested in my Ghostwriter, I have to sell 10,000 copies. How long that's going to take? That's what people are thinking, right? But then you have the next level up of the pyramid. What if your book led people right into a mastermind program where they could meet other readers who are implementing what you teach in the book together? Or maybe there's a masterclass. Mike Cernovich, he has the $97 Guerrilla Mindset 3-hour masterclass, which takes what's in his book and expands it into a ton of stories. Now you go from one reader buying $5, basically being worth $5 a profit. You have many, not all, maybe it's 10%, maybe it's 5% of your readers, but you've got people who are now going from your book into your course, into your program. That's how the client I mentioned, the number 3 best persuasion book of all time, that book made $300,000 from the launch. It was because I designed the book to lead people into the author's online program of the same name. It was a natural lead in. And then at the top of your pyramid, of course, is the high ticket service, one-on-one, done for you consulting, that type of thing. So you've got people you're funneling into your book revenue pyramid whose average dollar sale, their customer value, increases at each level up, so that you can be in the position of a plastics engineer I know. He has sold 0 copies of his book. 0. It's been out for over 10 years. What he does is he mails 100 copies of his book to his top 100 prospects every year, and he averages 1 new client a month just by mailing out free autographed copies of his book. It's incredible. His book revenue pyramid is pretty spectacular. It's 2 levels. Book, which is, free, so it's not even making any money. It's like an investment in it. But people see that this guy wrote the book on the industry. There's no other consultant you want to hire than the person who wrote the book on the industry. That goes for you too. So that's the long way around to say that I do indeed practice what I teach. And in this case, that's the counter industry pillar. Everyone else says, sell as many copies as possible. I say, build the tallest book revenue pyramid you possibly can.
Right. Don't necessarily rely on it for your sole source of revenue. I've had suspicions that might be a good way to view books in general. So you've confirmed my thinking on that one. So we've got credibility, connection, compelling, and going counter industry. We've got 2 more pillars to go.
Yes, the 5th one is directly tied to the book revenue pyramid, actually. It's the call to action. What's next when people read your content? That's an article you wrote for your LinkedIn, an email you're sending to a colleague. You're having a conversation with a prospect who you'd like to convert into a client. You have a book that you want people to go from the book to your masterclass for $97 on Gumroad. Maybe they'll become an ongoing coaching client, paying you $5,000 a month, for example. Happens all the time with my authors. Well, how do you actually get people to go from one stage to the next, or to leave them with something that gets you the outcome you desire? You have to make a call to action, as in, what is the act you want people to take, and make it as frictionless as possible. For books, what we usually do is have at the very beginning of the book this call out page. Can't miss it. To go beyond the book, get these free resources at this website, name of the book.com, and you'll get this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing, all these amazing content upgrades for free that take you beyond the book. We mention those tools throughout the book, and then boom, we have the call again at the end. Can't miss that call to action. People go right to the email list. They subscribe. They become on your newsletter. And eventually they become customers. So having a call to action, telling people what to do, and then giving a reason how it's going to benefit them, that's the call to action pillar.
That's the call to action pillar. And then finally, let me guess, the sixth pillar ties everything together, or is the sixth pillar's got to be epic? I can feel it.
The sixth pillar is circulation. In the book publishing industry, the number one tactic to drive book sales, or in the case of the pyramid, book revenue, is word of mouth marketing. According to Nielsen, word of mouth marketing is responsible for 92% of all book sales in the publishing industry. How do you get people to share a book or any product with another who shares it with another who shares it with another? I'll give you an example. I think we've all heard of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you were to take the common sense, conventional wisdom of our age, if you listen to the top marketing experts, here's what they will tell you. If you're marketing to everybody, you're marketing to no one. Niche down. Get specific. Wrong. Terrible idea. Here's why. Is it the 7 habits of highly effective middle managers at Fortune 500 tech companies? No. It's highly effective people. To get circulation, meaning your book is being passed from one person to another person to another person, your product, your service, your message, doesn't matter. You have to get that chain of sharing going. So if your book is for this tiny, tiny little niche, is that something that your first reader can share with their spouse, who can share it with their kid, who can share it with their professor, who can share it with their spouse, who can share it with their minister, who can share it with their sister, who shares it with their massage therapist? That's how circulation happens. A broad message. I always tell people when I'm ghostwriting a TED speech, a TED Talk speech, or a TEDx speech, I tell them the same. You're thinking about your topic from the perspective of who your audience is, like your clientele. It's not. It's people who have the YouTube app. So how could you share your message with any old yahoo who's got the YouTube app and is just browsing TEDx Talks or TED Talks? So we have to make it as broad as possible to get circulation.
So, and we're talking about now, are we talking about the title, or the content has to be as broad as possible, just really making this entry level as accessible as you can possibly get?
That's correct. That's correct. And I would go beyond entry level, but saying that there's something here for everyone. Something here for everyone. So it's not like you're only writing to a very specific type of person, but you are sharing information that would be useful to just about anyone. Another example, the great business systems book, The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. It's about how to set up systems inside of your business. Now, Michael Gerber's clientele is a small business owner with fewer than 50 employees. So the business owner with 50 employees or less makes a lot of appearances throughout his book. But the title, subtitle, the synopsis, aka blurb, aka product description that's on Amazon, it is wide open that this book is for anyone who has a business, whether you're a one-person side hustling freelancer or you're in the Fortune 500. And so the table of contents is set up that there's something there for everyone at the table of your content. That's circulation.
But you can still have some content that's focused on a particular, if you're writing for a more particular niche, you can have it a little bit more focused than that. Can you, or is it really just make this as broad as possible?
You want it as broad as possible, but to make sure that you're still speaking to your ideal segment of the market, that's where the examples come in. Right. Demonstrate you have the lived experience of your avatar, your ideal client. Remember the credibility pillar? By having your ideal client, your avatar, appear throughout the book in examples. Back to Michael Gerber's The E-Myth. there was a character in the book who was kind of the star of the show, a woman named Sarah who owned a bakery on Main Street. Like, that's exactly who he wants to target with his coaching services. But the book is for everyone. And so he talks about how to manage a vast workforce, how to do systems when it's just you. But his ideal client, it's her story he tells throughout the book.
That's okay. Now I see it all starting to come together. I'm going to have to listen to this podcast back again because this is fascinating stuff. I know when we had talked at the beginning of the hour that you had about an hour worth of content. We've reached that hour. I can't believe the time has flown by. The 6 pillars, once again, are credibility, connection, compelling counter-industry call to action, and circulation. So if one studies and applies those, they can expect their writing to become a lot more compelling, even without any other help?
That's correct. They can expect to be able to influence other people. So I advise you, use it for good, not for evil.
As always, yes, use it for good, not for evil. Joshua, if people want to find you on the interwebs, where can they search for you?
Best place they can go over to is my website, which is Entrepreneurs Wordsmith. Name of my business. Entrepreneurs is plural. Word and Smith are very simply Word and Smith. Speaking of the book revenue pyramid, I have a cool little calculator that tells you if you launched your book today, how much revenue would your book produce? Following the book revenue model that we discussed today. Free tool, no opt-in or email sign-up required. That's entrepreneurswordsmith.com, along with some other cool tools for authors, such as a book ideas generator. How do you take these loosely connected concepts that you have for a book that you might want to run with but aren't sure if they're the right ones, and come up with a great book title that would fit among the New York Times bestsellers? Check out the book ideas generator, also available at no cost or no subscription, no sign up at entrepreneurswordsmith.com. If you're more so a visual, audio-visual learner, my YouTube channel has over 120 book writing, book publishing, and book marketing trainings. That is Joshua Lisec. So if you go to YouTube, search Joshua Lisec, you'll find it.
And they are awesome videos. I can attest to that. I was binge watching a whole bunch of them between podcasts today. So I could definitely vouch for that. Joshua, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This has been an absolute blast, and I feel like I'm going to become a slightly better writer. And I hope that a lot of people go and check out your stuff and get educated on how a ghostwriter can help them and further their careers. So thank you very much for coming on, sir.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you, Elias.
And we will talk to you next time on Let's Solve the Universe. Bye, y'all. Love you.